Welcome to Keep the Game Beautiful podcast. Each week, I highlight incredible people who are doing amazing things in soccer, the beautiful game. I'm Anna Turi, your host. Thank you for listening. Today's guest is Jordan McMahon. Today, Jordan and I talk about balance. We talk about balancing school and soccer and being a grad assistant and soccer and just everything in general. And we also talk about balancing being a parent and a coach. And that was definitely a very interesting talk. And I really did enjoy hearing about that. And I hope you do too. We do spend some time talking about difficult conversations. We all know conversations that are hard are inevitable. And no matter what, it's going to happen. And we talk about how to deal with that too. I am a person that does not like conflict at all, and I do not want those hard conversations to happen, but I know they will. So I took some of the advice Jordan told me, and I'm kind of working with it, and I feel like I'm able to have a little bit more of a discussion that may be a little bit of a conflict, but hopefully not too much. I am really, really excited for you to hear today's episode because I enjoyed talking to Jordan, and it's just a great episode overall. I've been working on getting some more episodes recorded and ready, and I really am ready and excited to get back onto a normal release schedule every Monday morning. I hope you enjoy today's episode. Today's guest is Jordan McMahon. Jordan was born in Texas but played collegiately at Iowa State. She played 3 seasons for the Des Moines Menace, a WPSL team, and even spent a short amount of time with the Boston Breakers. She was a grad assistant for 2 years at Auburn University and then took an assistant coaching position at SIUE Women's Soccer. Now Jordan is a coach at VSA, a club in Iowa near me. Jordan, I'm wondering if you'd like to add anything else or talk about what got you to where you are today.
Thank you for the introduction. What got me here today, growing up in Texas, I started playing when I was 4, and back home, you get to play year-round, and so we were always outside. And so I just grew to love the sport with all the coaches that I had, and I had some really good friends growing up that did it and kept me going. And yeah, I just love it. I still play, so I still love the sport.
On this podcast, I always start with the same 3 questions. First, what does the beautiful game mean to you?
Well, in different parts of my life so far, it's kind of morphed into different things. Obviously, growing up, the goal was to play collegiately and stay competitive and play at a high level, showing what all the work that you do when you're in club, high school, and getting to that next level. And now in a different role as a mom and as a has-been, now it's just kind of being a coach and teaching the younger generation, my kids included, about that hard work and much fun it can be.
What are actions or things you do to keep the game beautiful?
I think in coaching, instilling that same drive and passion that I think can sometimes be fleeting from kids nowadays. Just trying to instill that and show that I still have it, and hopefully that can be something that they can grasp and learn from, and hopefully hone in on their own.
So the third and final question of these same 3 questions is how do you encourage others to keep the game beautiful?
I think playing for your teammates, playing for yourself, and maintaining the respect for others on the field, and having good sportsmanship, but also just true hard work. pure hard work, I think is a key component in maintaining the beautiful game.
Starting off, can you talk about why you decided to come all the way to Iowa to play in college?
Yeah. So it's kind of an interesting story. My mom is from Ames, which is where Iowa State is. My dad is from Algona, which is like north central, northwest Iowa. And they met in Texas. Um, and so I've been coming up to Iowa ever since I was a baby, and I have an extended family that lives in Ames. And so it became kind of just a goal of mine without even realizing it to come to Iowa and play. And then I went to a camp and got offered and committed when I was about your age. So that's about it.
Did you ever have any other schools that were possible options, or was it just always Iowa State?
I think because I committed so young verbally, so I was 15. I didn't get to, not get to, but I just didn't go that route with getting other colleges. Like I remember getting letters and pamphlets in the mail, but never being able to really think about that just because I was already committed.
Yeah, so I'm 15 and I'm verbally committed to play in Wisconsin. And sometimes I get the, wow, you're so young. Are you sure? How did you respond to that being so young?
I think you just don't know. I just didn't know. I think, I mean, you think about college it's just, it's such this idea, and you don't really know what it is until you get there. And so I think at the time I thought it was cool. Like we were so young, and that means that they really want you. And yeah, you are young, but I think you kind of know your decision. And the beautiful thing about verbally is I know it you need to be, I guess, loyal, but at the end of the day, like you need to make the right decision for you too. So I think keeping your options a little bit open just in case is also kind of smart.
You said you had these expectations for what you think college would be like. What did you think it was going to be like? And once you got there, had you discovered that your expectations were true or not true?
Yeah, good question. I I was just generally scared. I think I don't know if it's when you first get there, you're coming in and you're there for camp. You're there for your preseason camp. So your first thing that you're obviously thinking about is your conditioning tests, your speed work, how you're gonna compete against these women that have been doing it for 2 or 3 years. Um I think it is still scary once you get there, but I guess my expectations were pretty similar to what it was really like. It's hard. It's really hot at that time too. um, but you grit it out, and your teammates are there, and you're doing it all together. So it makes it, that much better.
Because you were able to go through this experience and not really knowing what was going to happen and being scared, are you able to relate to your players that you coach now?
Yes, definitely. Yeah, and as a female too, a female coach, there's even a deeper level of understanding, because in college they're becoming more and more, but um, there aren't very many. I was lucky enough to play for women throughout my college career, but a lot of schools, it's a lot of men. So I think that it was also a positive for me.
As a female, how are you hoping to encourage other players that you coach to continue to go on and coach?
I think leadership on the field, once you kind of see some of those players developing into either a vocal role or a just by actions, their leadership. You can help them in getting into postgraduate studies, getting their master's while being a grad assistant was one of my favorite experiences, honestly, and coaching with Auburn, the SEC, getting into a different conference was also eye opening too. They do things a little bit different, but it's very tight run ship, and those players are amazing. So
I wanted to ask you about getting your master's and also being a grad assistant next. What was that experience like in general?
in general, um, so a lot of it is in grad assistant role. You kind of do the behind the scenes work. You don't get to necessarily coach because you're limited to so many coaches on a staff. So, as in my role as a grad assistant at Auburn, because they already had three full-time assistant coach or three full-time coaches, I became more of behind the scenes doing errands, kind of just being a fly on the wall, which was almost a blessing, learning and just taking it all in and kind of being a sponge in that regard, especially with the staff being so experienced. um, yeah, I loved it.
How did you balance still going back to school and doing this coaching or somewhat just like background work?
Okay, so with school, you're not taking necessarily a full load in grad school, if you're completing it over the 2 year span. But what I loved about it was in grad school, you're getting to meet with such a diverse group of people. It's not your necessarily your typical 18 to 22-year-old group. There's a lot of professionals, a lot working within the university, at least within my major. So I got to hear about all of their experiences. A lot of them had kids, or they brought in just some cool personal point of view that you wouldn't have experienced just in your undergrad.
If a collegiate player wants to coach, would you recommend that they get a position as a grad assistant?
I think it depends, maybe. I think some cases you can jump right into it, and especially if they've had some prior coaching, even coaching high school or club, which I know a lot of players can do in the springtime in college. I remember coaching some U12 teams when I was in school in the spring and moving into the summer a little bit. But I think it does help you tremendously with practice planning, your scheduling, your just overall confidence in coaching. I think if you do have those 2 years of more learning, I think we can always learn more, right? We can always.
Were those U12 teams your first big break in coaching, your first start, or was there something else that really made you want to be a coach?
That was my first official coaching position. Took over the two teams where I had to plan the practice, and yeah, I think that's been one of my favorite ages too, and I am so grateful that I started with that group, because they were, I mean, U9 to U12, you are such a significant age in how you're so impressionable. You just you take coaching so well, I think, at that age too. And I think that's a defining moment for a lot of players on if they want to even continue that route. I mean, 9 to 12, I think you can kind of sit back and say, maybe I want to do this in college, or give it a go and club.
So we're talking about that age group where they're deciding if they want to keep playing, and it's all about how the coach acts. How important is it that we have a positive attitude and we keep encouraging the players to play?
Super. There's enough in today's society that's not positive, I think. Unfortunately. And that coaches are so significant with that. Because if they don't have it, maybe they don't have it at home, and if they don't have that kind of structure either, then the only place that they're going to be able to get it is on the field and at soccer. So yeah, I think my biggest role models have been two main individuals, and both of them have been coaches. So
If a parent listening as a child and their child's coach is not the most positive and is not encouraging them, what should the parent do?
that's tough. Um, I I think that without discussing it in a negative way in front of your child, there should be a conversation. I think everything is good when you do things face to face rather than through a phone or text messaging. Things have become a little interpersonal, but I think a conversation with that coach is would be important, especially if you're thinking of if the child is having poor reactions or is doubting themselves. I think the conversation with a parent and a coach is appropriate.
Talking about some of these difficult conversations, and we're all going to experience difficult conversations throughout our whole entire life. What piece of advice would you give to someone when going into a hard conversation like the one you just mentioned?
Well, you're going to be dealt with conflict, whether that is a coaching disagreement, but understanding that no matter what, you are in control of your own actions, and understanding that. So we had coaches that were really hard on us, and some kids don't react well to that. Some kids do. And I think understanding that they're not necessarily trying to offend you or trying to hurt you, maybe, and just being open to the conversation. I think that's just going to be a really hard thing for kids to understand, that sometimes the coaches are they're just, I don't know, trying to be hard on you. They don't mean anything by it. I think there's some coaches that don't understand that they're hurting feelings. So making that known would be necessary if you want to have a positive experience, leaving everything on the table, so to speak.
What can a coach do to make sure that everyone around, parents and players, know that this is an environment where they're going to learn and grow and maybe receive constructive criticism too?
I think having a discussion at the beginning of the season is important. Like, these are my expectations. These are how my practices are ran. This is how I deal with conflict, or this is how I discipline. Having that known and making sure that that's a consistent philosophy, his or her philosophy throughout the season is important. Sometimes things in writing could be helpful, but also having benchmarks throughout the season too, and giving that feedback to parents. Because I know a lot of parents, they drop their kids off, and for 2 hours, who knows what's happening. And so being able to have an open an open conversation with the parents, I think would be helpful.
What have some of your personal philosophies been throughout the years?
I think a quote my dad would always say, my dad's also a coach. He coached um, varsity boys basketball for 25 years and at a huge school in Texas. But hard work beats talent at every time when talent doesn't work hard. So I just being a hard worker, not only for yourself, but for your teammates, do it for the love of the game, and show true character through just your pure work ethic.
Earlier, you mentioned that two of your biggest role models were coaches. Can you talk about some of the people that have mentored you along your journey?
Yep. First one is my dad. He was a coach with coached me in every sport I played. And he is my biggest role model in that side, especially in the sports world. I remember my brother and I would play basketball on the back. We had driveways in the back of the house in Texas. And we'd play basketball up there super late, playing horse, and he just instilled the love of sports in general with me. And he's an honest, hardworking Midwestern. So, so I grew up wanting to be just like him in the coaching sense. And then my second one is Hugh Bradford. He was my club coach the majority of my club days at Defeater Soccer Club in Texas. He's, I think, the director of coaching now down there. But there's just something about his demeanor and the way that he respected each and every player that we wanted to play for him. We wanted to win for him. You know, we didn't want to disappoint him. And then there was nothing that he was doing that was scaring us to this point. There's just something about the way he loved each and every one of us that made us successful as a team and made us want to all play for him and for each other.
What kind of things do you take from your dad specifically in terms of parenting, but also introducing your own kids into sports?
I'm a big believer of trying everything, and that's what my brother and I did. You know, they threw us in every sport, and for girls to play with the boys, I'm all for it in any sport. But I think just his honest hard work, that gritty, that quote where I don't know if it was like Mia Hamm or Michael Jordan, you're bent over, drenched in sweat, as if no one is watching. You know, you're just like, love the game so much that it doesn't matter if you get all the notoriety. You're just there to work hard and have fun. And that's what he taught me.
I also wanted to ask you a little bit about coaching and being a mom. Is it tough to balance both of those, being away at tournaments or practices or anything?
Yeah, well, mine aren't at that age yet. So I have a almost 3.5-year-old, a 2-year-old, and a 7-month-old. So I know I'll get to that point where tag teaming and all of that. I'm grateful. My mom and dad moved back to Iowa. I guess it's been 2 summers. And so Mimi and Papa have been super helpful in the babysitting department. But yeah, it's definitely challenging. It's you miss out on things, definitely, as a female coach and a mom. You're either missing out on getting to do what you love and coach, or you're going to miss out with time with your kids. And so I know dads have it too. But I think there's just in society, there's a little bit more pressure on moms.
And some of those are tough decisions. And I want to ask you about that. How can you, when you see a tough decision, how can you kind of decide and weigh your pros and cons in a sense?
Well, I know I'm gonna make mistakes, so the pros and the cons. I think if they know, for my girls or my kids, my son's 7 months, but I think if they know what mommy's doing, and they've been to even games that I've played in our adult league, but um, getting to be a part of it in a way, I think that is what makes the times where I'm not with them worth it. They know what mommy's doing, and maybe that's helping instill, you know, they're a little young yet, but instilling some type of love for sport or love for soccer.
How important is it to you that you not only continue to coach, but also continue to play?
Oh, uh, super. It's especially the playing part. I still, I kind of have this thing with a couple of the girls. I have a good friend who also played at Iowa State, who I play co-ed with, and we are still so competitive. And so at that point, I think I'm gonna try, if my body allows me. I'm gonna try to keep playing, and until maybe that doesn't seem as important, the wins or the losses, or getting that tackle, or making that shot, or whatever it is. But maybe once that drive isn't as bright as it is now still, maybe then I give it up. But it is super important to me to be part of the game in any facet. But yeah, I think also with the coaching side of it, I've been coaching this last couple years, been coaching the 9s and 10s academy. And so that's a big step for those kids, choosing academy with the intent to go to club. And that's why I find that group too super fun, and it's very fulfilling to me to be coaching them, and hopefully seeing a lot of them progress to the next level.
I'm gonna bring it back a little bit to your time with the Des Moines Menace. Can you talk about how you first got involved with the Des Moines Menace?
Yeah, there was, I want to say it was like a U23 team at the time, when we were in college. It may have been my junior or senior spring. We had an individual coach come up to Iowa State and say that they were starting a team, like a summer team, um, and asked if, we had certain people that were staying around in the summer that would want to play on the team. And you can only have 5 from a university on these semi-pro WPSL teams. And I think it's 5 on the team, or 5 training at a time per rules. And I don't know if those rules have changed since, but so there were 5 of us that would drive from Des Moines to Ankeny at the time, before they moved to Des Moines. And we'd drive there and go to practice every morning, and then play on the weekends. And then from then, Menace became more of a staple with the men's program. And so we both train at Valley. And I don't think there was a summer outside of that summer spent in Boston that I hadn't played that until it folded last year. So yeah, it's just another way of staying in shape, staying competitive, and getting to play a lot of girls that we kind of saw within the conference, at least in the Midwest, or we knew from the Midwest.
Was there a difference in playing level really compared to college at all?
we had a couple of teams I'd say were pretty elite. So we played against the Chicago Red Star Reserve teams. And so you had a couple of girls that may have been back from injury or they just needed more minutes. So they would play with the reserve team that were actually on the professional team. And so you could see a little bit of some variation in obviously skill and when you play against those groups. But for the most part, it was still as competitive, I would feel like college would be.
How did you see the WPSL grow over the years?
Well, we would first be taking we would either drive ourselves to a lot of these games or we'd take vans and whatnot. And so once we started growing, maybe in that third year, there was definitely more support from companies and from your sponsors that allowed you to take buses and just like the financial side of it started to grow more and that was shown. I think too, we got to get the last couple years, we had girls coming in from the Southeast, from Florida. We had a couple she went to a school in New York, I think. There was a bunch of schools all over that these kids would come from, and then they'd be housed by parents through the Menace or through just Des Moines. And so we had a lot more diversity among the team as far as not most, for the first couple of years, most of our players were from Iowa or we were at Iowa State or UNI or Upper Iowa, I think was another school too. Plugging in girls from all over, that was a big help for us.
What can what can anyone do just at home or going to a game? What can they do to help grow the women's game at a higher level?
Yeah, go to games. I think even tuning into the league when they're playing. They don't always have the best times that they're shown. But if you can get to games, I know they have a really good following out in Northwest United States. And if we can kind of mirror that everywhere else, getting to games, social media, I mean, women supporting women has been a big thing. And it's super, super awesome. Just even from when I was playing, how that's grown. But I know it's always going to be a battle for women in sports, but I think they're making awesome steps. And if we can continue to just spread the word and get our maybe get to games would be awesome. But
what about growing the women's game at a more local club level like you're at right now?
It's actually really big here. So I know as far as the guy side, they have joined I think it's the NPL league, or it's a more elite level for club. And I think the females are next. We just, I think, need to get more programs within the Midwest for that to be an option. But we actually had, at VSA especially, we had the largest number of kids in the academy in the state of Iowa at our club. So, and that number hasn't changed. It hasn't gone down or anything like that. So I think once we maintain that and then we can continue to grow it, we're looking to be in a good spot to compete with, even the Texas and California states. So
So if I understand correctly, before VSA, you started up a soccer program in a smaller community. Can you talk about your inspiration for this?
Yeah, so it was there. already. North Sun Strikers. Oh, that was such a fun job. Amazing people. They brought me into. I lived up there with Kyle, my husband. I moved to Iowa Falls for a year after grad school once we got engaged because we were distance dating for 3 years. And so once we got engaged, I moved back to Iowa and Iowa Falls, and they had a small rec program, and they brought me in to be like director of coaching. And so, and I didn't know exactly what that meant at the time, but it's from U6 to U14, and they had at least one team at every age group. They didn't have a U14 girls team at the time. So the girls were playing on the boys team, and these girls were awesome, and they were really good athletes. But since that started, I would go and coach at each team at least once throughout the season. And so I'd be going from U6 to U7 and so on. And then give the coaches kind of like a guide for practice planning. And then, yeah, I got to be part of every group. I knew every kid's name. Just a really, really humbling experience. And they're still continuing it today. The leadership there is amazing, and they truly, truly invest in their kids, and a lot of time. They put a lot of time in their kids in the coaching side of it because they are limited in coaches, especially soccer coaches.
How did you adapt from coaching all different age levels at once?
I mean, you get the hang of it. So I mean, in each kid, it's kind of like on one team. You kind of you can't coach every kid the same way, right? If you did, you may be doing a disservice to some of those kids. But I think the expectations can still kind of remain the same. Maybe just it's a tone or it's a general demeanor that you have with each kid that may change. But um, that depends on the age with that U6 to U10. And mind you, like some of these kids, even at U12, they may have never played before. They're starting soccer at age 11, which, isn't something that I was used to either. Growing up, people had individual skill lessons when they were 5. So it's definitely a different culture, and it's a different environment. So being able to go back to the basics and kind of teaching fundamentals was kind of was a good starting point with that group. But it was coaching the parents who would do a lot of the field coaching too. So you're coaching the parents almost as much as you're coaching the kids. So that was also something to adapt to.
I think we found a very good place to start to wrap up. I have one final question, which I ask each and every guest. What do you hope people remember about your impact to soccer and the world?
To never give up, to work hard, think play for the name on the front and not the name on the back, and that I hope I showed how much I loved the game, how much I enjoyed the game, and that I respected it with how hard I worked.
It was really fun to learn about Jordan's playing journey and how she verbally committed so young because I am someone that verbally committed very young and am 100% sure about my decision. But I often got those weird looks and the questions asking if I was sure or if I was ready. And I've always known that is where I want to be, especially when I first drove into the city. I knew you just had this gut feeling in a way. But it just made me feel uncertain because I did commit so young and I was hearing all these people in the background kind of unsure if I was ready or sure about my decision. And it wasn't that I didn't want to go to this school, but that I just heard those background noises. So it was nice to kind of know that someone else went through the same thing that I did in terms of committing very young. We also talk a little bit about the age level that she prefers to coach at, and that was a really fun conversation as well, because I've never really thought about how important the 9-year-old, 10-year-old age is for a child in terms of if they are going to continue to play or not. And that's something really cool, and that's why I love that that is her favorite age level to coach. And that's something that I think I will relate to so much when I get older and begin to coach because I haven't coached like a 14U level before, but I don't think it will be one of my favorites. I think 9-year-olds and 10-year-olds just seem to have so much more fun and they're doing it because it's fun. And that's definitely just such a great age to kind of shape them into great players. I hope you enjoyed today's episode, and until next time, remember to keep the game beautiful.